A few months after getting my motorcycle endorsement, I started becoming more aware of the different types of riding that were available. Uh, Before getting my motorcycle license, I mean, you just think, well, riding a motorcycle is riding a motorcycle. It's kind of all the same, right? I mean, you don't even really notice the difference between types of motorcycles for the most part. Then you get in the community and you start getting introduced to, oh, that's a cruiser, that's a sports bike, that's an ADV bike, that's a dual sport, that's a trail bike, and all of a sudden you're starting to understand that there's a lot of different niches or niches, whatever you want to call it, within the community, right? Um, as I said, one of these was ADV riding. And the more I looked at these different things, the more it appeared to be that this was really going to be where I was mostly interested. I mean, I'm really not a long distance cruiser, and I'm not looking to do a lot of track days on a super sport or something like that. Uh, but traveling through kind of the undiscovered country, if you will, and I realize none of it's undiscovered if you got a gravel road there, but you get my drift. Kind of seeing the traveling the road less traveled, if you will. That seemed to be what appealed to me. Now, maybe you feel the same way, but if you do, you may also be like I was, which was, the first question was, well, where can I ride? That's what we're going to be looking at today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bike Like a Dog. Please be sure to like and subscribe before you leave today. Now, as new ADV riders, what do we need to know, really? I mean, and I'm going to say one of the first places I would start, unless you've been riding dirt bikes your whole life, because I do know that a lot of people have been like, I've been riding a dirt bike since I was 12. And if you've been doing that, skip this piece, right? But if you're not, if you're like me, where you're just coming in and you're riding bikes and you really haven't done a lot like that, I would highly recommend the MSF Dirt Bike School. That was a great place to learn to handle off-road riding, to learn how to slide your bike and do some things like that, to cross over obstacles and things. Uh, and if you do it in a location like the one that I did up in Alpharetta, Georgia, above Atlanta, they actually had loaner bikes. So I was able to do that on a Honda CRF. A lot of fun, a lot of fun. But you don't have to use one of their bikes. There were guys that brought in their Super Adventure 1290s. There was a BMW 1250, a Honda Africa Twin. But there were also some 125s and a couple of 250s and stuff like that. So no matter what you have, you'll fit in. Whether you use a loaner, bring your own, just have fun. I don't think I would take a Ninja for that. Okay. I guess you could put knobbies on it, but I wouldn't. Anyway, um, next you might take a look at finding some adventure schools near you, or semi near you. Speaking for myself here in Georgia, I know I can go over to South Carolina, to the BMW facility over there, and I can do either a 1 or 2 day adventure riding class. I also know that Brett Cax does a class in North Georgia, up I think around Truett McConnell, each spring. There are some other training organizations up in North Georgia, um, and you can search around in your area. There are these organizations exist all over the country, and especially as you start getting out into like the Northwest, and things like that, there's a lot of great riding country, and as a result, there are some great riding schools, because when you've got really great riding that close by, somebody's going to start up a school to take advantage of it, because they don't have to maintain that course. They just teach people how to ride it. And of course, also up into Canada, great courses up there. So yeah, lot of alternatives there. Now, once you've had enough training to be dangerous, which is about where I am right now, it's time to find some roads to ride. And this is where it can be a little bit challenging, but might not be as challenging as you think. Now, if you already have some GPS uh, apps or trail apps, things like that, you may already have more access than you realize. These are apps like Rever, Gaia, CFMOTO, Ride with GPS, OnX Offroad, Riser, and any number of others. And in many cases, these already have a lot of routes already in there, or at least roads that you can look at. In some cases, they may not necessarily have a route, but if you zoom in on the map, you may be able to see that, oh, this is a paved road, this is an unpaved road. This one's dirt, this one's gravel. So different apps will do better at identifying that kind of stuff. So you may be able to find a good bit of stuff just by using an app like that. Now, typically, especially depending on where you live, now I live south of Atlanta, so obviously I am not out in some wilderness by any means, which means that most of the dirt roads, gravel roads, things like that around me are really, they're just rural roads, right? People live on those things. They take their Priuses down the road. So these are not really challenging roads, but they're dirt, they're gravel, and it gives me a chance as a brand new rider to experience something that's not pavement and get used to kind of a little more of a low traction environment, especially if they've just laid down new gravel, in which case it can be really challenging. And some of them have a number of washouts and stuff like that. Just it just depends. So that's one thing you can do. Uh, Another thing is you can look for a local adventure riding group. For example, again, I live on the south side of Atlanta, and there's a Facebook group called South Atlanta Adventure Riders. I joined that. I've gone on a ride with them. Sometimes they do their rides, they'll be local and they're kind of beginner friendly, or even, I would say, beginner focused with a lunch at a barbecue place, halfway through. But they'll also take trips up to the Chattahoochee BDRX or the Smoky Mountain 500 or some other stuff like that. So it gives you a group to ride with. And that's one thing I want to caution you about if you're a beginner ADV rider. Don't go alone. It's very tempting to go ride alone. And I will ride alone on these local roads that are near me because they're, 20, 30 miles from my house. My wife can come rescue me in the Sequoia if she needs to, because they're just dirt and gravel roads. People live on them. There's a mailboxes just going by left and right. Um, but nothing really out of the way of communication. I do still take my Garmin inReach just in case I happen to be in a pocket with no cell service, but it's very rare. But if you're truly a beginner and you're truly going on a one of the BDRs or some other trail, I would highly recommend finding a group to ride with. All right. Now, finding other trails. Now, here's obviously you can use the internet to find good trails. Here's a site that really surprised me. It's called gravelmap.com. Gravel, like a gravel road, gravel map, all one word.com. It will help identify gravel roads near you. And you'll be surprised. I was shocked when I brought up the map around where I live, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea there were this many unpaved roads around me. I mean, it was awesome. And even though it's not routes or anything like that, let's face it, none of the routes are all dirt. You have to, ride this little section and then you take a paved road and then ride this other little section. But by seeing all the gravel roads around you, you can kind of put together your own route, which is kind of cool. Um, Other things you can do, you can look up as you're doing your searches on the internet, you can look up stuff like overland routes, OHV routes, motorcycle adventure trails, and so forth. I looked up the Georgia Adventure Trail and discovered over a dozen routes by VMan 1313 here in Georgia and the surrounding states. Um, I found the Georgia OHV trails. There was a site called alltrails.com, which has a section in the U.S. for Georgia off-road driving. That site, alltrails.com, it's got a lot more. Now you need to sign in, but I think you can do it for free. Um, but yeah, that looks like it's a pretty good resource from what I've seen. And let's face it, if you can take a four-wheeler over these routes, you can get an ADV bike or a dual sport going down it. All right, shouldn't be a problem. Then you have the trails that are done by organizations, right? Probably the one most widely known in the United States is probably the Trans-America Trail, or TAT. As implied, this trail crosses the United States from one coast to the other. But there are some side trails, spurs, things like that, so that you don't have to go all the way to the Atlantic and traverse it all the way to the Pacific. And even then, there's not just one way. You've got a couple of alternate ways to go. So it's kind of cool to be able to do that. And then there's one called the GNAR, G-N-A-R. It's the Great Northern Adventure Route. I believe that one is in Rever. You can go look that up in YouTube. There's a video about it. And that's one of the nice things about these things, like the Trans-America Trail. You can go look in YouTube and find any number of videos of people crossing the country on the Trans-America Trail, riding anything from a Honda CT 125 itty bitty trail bike all the way up to biggins and everything in between. So that's a good way to get an idea. Hey, is this trail something that really interests me or not? One of my favorite groups in North America is RideBDR. If you go to ridebdr.com, you'll see a number of different trails. And if you've watched enough of their videos, or if you've watched enough of anybody's videos talking about ADV, you'll hear the term BDR thrown around a lot. I mean, a lot. And I've done it myself in the ones that I just finished doing about going to Sturgis for Get On ADV Fest in 2025. I talked about the Black Hills BDRX. And we have a tendency to think everybody knows what that means, but we don't. Not everybody does. So BDR stands for BackROAD Discovery Route. This is an official organization, and they put together all of these routes. Now, this map right here is current as of August 2025. It even includes the most recently announced Texas Hills BDR there, just northwest of San Antonio there. And that's probably the most beginner friendly route that they have. All right. But I do know they've got, in addition to all these, they probably have several dozen in process. I know they said they've got one coming up in Montana. I think I've heard they've got something coming up in Michigan. They've got one in the Ozarks. They got one in British Columbia. I mean, they've just got a bunch of them in various stages of development. And of course, the Montana one's going to fill in that gap there from the northern part of Wyoming up to Canada, I'm sure. These are really awesome routes. You can go, obviously, where the Trans-America Trail goes east-west, coast to coast. These are going mostly north-south. I don't know if that's, by design because they didn't want to duplicate the Trans-America Trail or what, but That's suits me fine. I think it's pretty cool to be able to go from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, or to go from the Gulf shores all the way up into Canada, and possibly on into Canada once they get some of those Canadian routes done. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Um, Now, if you look at the map here, you can see there are several different color combinations here. So let me briefly explain it. The blue portions are the actual BDRs, the actual backroad discovery routes. Um, the purple ones are the looping routes, or what they call the BDRX routes. If you see BDR-X, that's a loop. And you can see there's the one up in South Dakota, the Black Hills. There's the two of them down in Texas. There's Chattahoochee BDRX there in North Georgia. So there are a number of those loops that are there, and uh, some of them hook into existing BDRs. Some of them are standalone. Wouldn't surprise me if somewhere along the way, the ones that are standalone eventually link into something, but that's pure speculation on my part. I've heard nothing. I've not heard them say anything that would tell you they're going to do that. It's just pure speculation on my part. But this is a nonprofit organization. They started putting these trails together, consisting of paved, unpaved routes, and they're specifically designed for motorcycles. So these are not OHV routes. These are not four-wheeler routes or something like that. This isn't something that started off as a Jeep trail and then they said, hey, why don't we do it for... These are for motorcycles. They were designed for motorcycles. And you can go look at their movies on YouTube for the various routes, and you get a really good idea for what each one looks like. There's a big difference between a Southeast BDR and the Oregon BDR or the Colorado BDR. Each one has its own unique riding, its own unique challenges, and its own unique scenery. Each one has challenging sections as well as easy sections, but they don't really recommend you go on them as a beginner rider. And this is your first off-road track. But at the same time, they say if you stay off the expert sections, it's probably not. Yeah, it's probably doable. And they did say, as I said, the Texas Hills BDRX that they just did was pretty beginner friendly. That's actually one from what I heard, that you probably could do as a beginner and really have a good time. And it's also one that they say is kind of designed for the big 1200 plus bikes. They're like, this one is really big bike friendly. And because there's apparently long stretches, it's Texas after all. But these, the BDRs, they mostly go through these small towns. They avoid interstates like the plague. A couple of 100 miles on a BDR for a day is a full day. This isn't cruising. If you look at the map and you realize you don't have to do the entire route in one trip. For example, the Southeast BDR goes from the Florida coast up to Damascus, Virginia, and that's done in 9 sections. 9. And when you get to Damascus, you could then pick up the Mid-Atlantic BDR, riding it north until you get to the Northeast BDR, which you can take up to the Canadian border. So you can piece these together. You can put together like a month trip to go, from border to border. There are lots of people who do not ride the BDRs all in one shot, right? They'll take a weekend, go ride a couple of sections, go back home, go back another time, ride a couple of different sections, and then go back home. So it may take them 3-4 different trips to get an entire BDR ridden, to where they've hit every single section. But that's fine. That the whole thing about this ADV riding is you can do it in a way that fits in with your schedule, Now, each BDR has a starting point and ending point. Nothing says you can't start at the ending point or end at the starting point. right? Um, you can start in the middle and go north, go south. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. Kind of cool. Now, you can buy the Butler maps of these various BDR maps, BDR routes, and I recommend that both as a backup and a souvenir. They're really nice maps. They're very high quality maps, and it doesn't hurt you to have a hard copy just in case all your electronics go right. But you can load the tracks onto your GPS device, whether that's a phone or a dedicated GPS. I recommend a dedicated GPS with your phone as a backup because you're going to be doing water crossings. You're going to be getting whacked by tree bushes and trees and stuff, and you don't want to be falling over and your phone gets whacked and there you are, right? Phones are expensive. GPS not so much. Not to mention the fact that the phone is your primary method of communication. The GPS is a navigator. I also recommend having a rescue device like the Garmin InReach. That's just what I have. It's what a lot of guys have, but there are others. Just but it's in a way where you can communicate even if you're outside of cell service. Um, if you decide to ride a route, I highly recommend watching the YouTube movie for that route because it's not only good introduction to the type of riding that you'll be doing, but it's also shows you a lot of the places that you can stop, a lot of places that you can camp or hotels or different things, different places you can eat and even a few sites that are kind of off the beaten path, and you'll miss it if you don't know about it, right? Um, RideBDR is a nonprofit organization, as I said, but obviously donations are appreciated. But the tracks are free. Let me repeat that. The GPS tracks are free. I mean, obviously, there's a charge for waterproof printed maps and everything, but you could absolutely get the tracks and go ride the BDR without paying RideBDR a single penny. Now, personally, I feel like I need to make a donation if I'm going to use their tracks because I appreciate the effort that they've gone into to do this. And I am a supporter of RideBDR. I'll say that up front. Um, but I also like to have those waterproof maps. Before you leave to go on your adventure, and I would say this about any place that has an online thing, whether it's the BDRs or the TAT or anything else, go take a look and see if there are any route updates because this is nature. Things happen, right? A good example is they were trying to make the Southeast BDR movie and a couple of weeks before they were riding, they had the route all put together. They had it all done, and a couple of weeks before they wrote, they were doing the ride to do their filming and everything. Hurricane Helene came through and wiped out the northern part of the route. I mean, literally, the roads were gone, absolutely gone. So now it's a good idea to always go take a look because there may be some, especially in that particular area, for example, they're rebuilding, and so there may be some roads that are open, or there may be some alternate routes or things like that. So you always want to get the latest information before you take off. You'll save yourself some heartache and headaches. Other resources on the Ride BDR website and or any of these really, there's decals, patches, things of that nature. They help support the organization. There are also rider resources like training schools and even bike rental places. Now, I live in the southeast. Most of these are not down in my area. They're pretty much out west along some of those BDR routes and everything. But that's fine. I mean, I could go out there, rent a bike, go through one of their schools, and ride one of those BDRs. I think that'd be really kind of exciting. Um, and before I leave, let me point out something about riding a BDR in America. Now, this is kind of for our non-American friends who are thinking about coming over here and possibly doing some of this riding. We as Americans take something for granted that's not necessarily self-evident for people that are not from here. All right. I discovered this when I had some folks from India onshore that I worked with my company, and one of the men was like, "Yeah, my wife is in Indiana, and I need to drive up there to get her, and I'm really nervous about it." And I was like, "Why? You drive around here, all the time." I knew for a fact that he drove to and from work and had gone places in Georgia and everything. And he was like, "No, I know how to drive in Georgia, but I don't know how to drive in other states." And I was like, um, okay. You see, those of us who are Americans, we find this difficult to grasp because to us, driving from one state to another is like driving from one county or one city to another. You barely even know you've crossed the state line, right? You're driving along and it's like, yeah, what state am I in? I don't even know. uh, you may pass a sign that says, "Welcome to Tennessee." Hey, welcome to Tennessee. But driving in the United States there's no difference in driving the different states for the most part. There are a few changes, and I would say there are probably more with motorcycles than there are with cars because there are some states do require helmets while others don't. But if you have a helmet, then you're set either way. And if you're riding ADV, you're probably going to have a helmet anyway because you don't want to get whacked in the head by a tree when you drive by. Um, but unless you're wanting to carry firearms or something like that, you're probably fine. If you want to carry firearms, I strongly recommend just double checking the laws in the states that you intend to visit. It's not typically going to be that big a deal because we do, you know, uh, our Second Amendment does give you the right to bear arms here in the United States. But but then again, that doesn't mean that everybody's riding down the trails with their six shooters hanging off their hips, right? It's not the wild, wild west. Uh, and then the last thing I would say is that you can always push the easy button, right? Now, I don't mean that you can go, hey, I'm gonna do the easy arrangements or something like that. I'm gonna go do the easy ride. What I'm saying is that you can find companies that do ADV tours. They provide support vehicles. They book your hotels or camping. The whole nine yards. They plan the whole trip. All you really have to do is show up ready to ride. One such organization or one such company would be Riding Adventures, RideADV.com. They have American tours, including Baja California. They have one in the Spirit of the Southwest, the Best in Oregon, California Coast, and so forth. They also do international tours to, Vietnam, Patagonia, a lot of different places. But we're only covering American here, so that's what I'm talking about. Another company would be Colorado MotorcycleAdventures.com. Became aware of them at Get On ADV Fest because they did the bike rentals there. Now, they tend to focus mostly in the Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho area, but they have tours as well as just bike rentals. If you want to just fly up, rent a bike, and head out on one of the local BDRs or something. But if you want the easy button, yeah, you just sign up for one of their tours and have fun. And don't worry about, and you really don't have to worry about anything because all of the logistics are taken care of for you. It's almost like going on a cruise, only you get to ride a bike, which to me is awesome. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this week. Be sure to like and subscribe before you leave today. Really appreciate you stopping by, spending your valuable time here. I highly encourage anyone who's interested in learning to ride, to do adventure riding or something like that, go take a look at the RideBDR resources, watch some of their movies. Also, some of the others, like, look up the Trans-America Trail, the Great Northern Adventure Route, and things like that. There are always others like Adventure Tomac, Moto Mission Brought Guild, Dork in the Road, Big Rock Moto, and on and on. These guys are riding these BDR routes, posting their videos of them, and uh, and then you have the smaller channels, uh, like one of the guys in the South Atlanta Adventure Riders who has his own channel and has posted some of his rides. Uh, so anyway, do your homework, have fun, enjoy, and y'all have a good week. We'll see you next time. So long, y'all.